When you take a competitive shooter, add 100 players on a shrinking map, you get what we are currently calling a Battle Royale game. Tetris also has a competitive multiplayer mode, and if you feature 99 players in the game, I would call it a Battle Royale Tetris game. But Super Mario Bros. Is not a competitive game. It's a single-player game, so you can't have 100 people play the game side by side and call it a Battle Royale. We already have a name for this. We call it a race. To change the race into a competitive multiplayer game, we will need to add some new mechanics. Let's start with a way for players to interfere with one another, to turn this race into more of a game. Players can't shoot each other, and they can't send lines, so let's have the players send enemies to one another. We will also need a way to bring the game to the end. The shooting games make the field smaller, and Tetris increases the multiplier on the lines that are sent to other players. In Super Mario Bros. 35, a timer will be included. The longer the game, the faster the countdown will go until there's only one player standing. The original Super Mario Bros. Had two objectives. To win the game, the player needs to save the princess. But you also don't want to lose the game by running out of lives. These two objectives would conflict with one another. This is what gave the player meaningful choices to make as they played. When a super mushroom appears, it starts traveling away from the player. The mushroom will help me reach the princess by changing Mario into Super Mario, but chasing after it could result in losing a life. I can choose the risky option to chase it, or the safe option by taking it slower. Super Mario Bros. 35 changes one of the objectives. To win, you need to outlast all of the other players instead of saving the princess. But you now only get one life. If you lose that one life, you're out of the game. So there are now two ways to lose the game. You can lose a life or run out of time. These two resources, health and time, are what the player needs to manage in order to outlast the other players and win the game. The most common resource management game is a real-time strategy game, like StarCraft or Pikmin. In these games, the player commands different units and uses them to gather and distribute resources. In Mario 35, you gather resources by platforming. Platforming games are all about jumping and navigating obstacle courses. So the player is awarded 2 seconds added to their countdown when jumping on an enemy. If you can combo your jump, then the time bonus increases. You are awarded anywhere from 3 to 15 seconds when finishing a course. At that point, another course is randomly selected and you continue play. The other resource is Mario's health. Here is the flowchart from Mario's state in the original game. There was one change made for this game. If the player is controlling Fire Mario and takes a hit, instead of reducing to Small Mario, the player will be controlling Super Mario instead. Knowing the location of the power-ups is integral to keep Mario in the game. Since there are no longer extra lives, the coins and 1-up mushrooms have been repurposed to support Mario's health instead. Build up your coins because you can exchange 20 of them in order to spin a roulette for a free power-up. There are 4 outcomes: a mushroom, a fire flower, a POW block that will clear the screen, and a Starman. A Starman works the same as the original game, making Mario invincible for a set period of time. You can find coins throughout the courses, and a 1-up is now valued at 20 coins. Just like in the original game, juggling the time and the health of Mario creates meaningful choices for the player to make. First, enemies give out different amounts of time depending on the manner that they are dispatched. For a Goomba, a stomp from above grants 2 seconds and can start a combo chain for more. Invincible Mario also gets 2 seconds for each Goomba that he touches, whereas hitting a Goomba with a fireball only grants 1 additional second. So when encountering a row of Goombas, even if Mario's health is maxed out, as Fire Mario, you may want to get a jump combo or a shell combo going to increase your time faster instead of hitting them all with fireballs. When starting a game of StarCraft, you begin with 1 or 2 buildings and some units to begin gathering resources. When starting a new game of Mario 35, you control Small Mario, have 35 seconds, and 0 coins. The first objective is the same for both games. Begin to gather resources. Go to the nearest power-up to increase Mario's health, and begin jumping on enemies to increase your time. I call Goombas and Koopa Troopa enemies time fodder. They're there so that you can farm them and send them to other players, so that they can farm them for time and send them back to you. The players that have repeatedly played the earlier stages will begin to create a stockpile of health and time resources. At this point, players will start to play offensively. The warp zones allow the player to choose the next stage they want to play. Stages like 1-3 with moving platforms and lots of places to end the game at the bottom of the screen are less desirable, as they tend to cost more time to play through and consist of mostly time fodder enemies. Instead, if you have a good stock of resources, then you may want to travel to the water stages or the castle stages, because sending enemies from here to your opponent can really trip them up and get them to start spending their resources. In a water stage, if I don't have Fire Mario, I will start to spin the roulette to get a Fire Flower so that I can dispatch the Cheep Cheeps and Bloopers to the other players. If these enemies appear in overland stages, then they will be flying instead of swimming, causing my opponents to slow down and potentially get hit and need to spend their coins to improve Mario's health. If I have a good stock of coins and time, I will always pick a castle stage. You win this kind of stage by defeating Bowser. Sending Bowser to an opponent will guarantee slowing them down unless they have a Starman on hand. This is a big change from the original Super Mario Bros. To Mario 35. Platformers are about completing obstacle courses, whereas this game is more like StarCraft, making sure that you have more resources than your opponent and finding ways to get them to spend their resources before you do. Later in the game, I will avoid sending timer fodder enemies to the other players, and instead try to only send more inconvenient enemies like Hammer Brothers to catch the opponent off guard, Buzzy Beetles because they cannot be killed with fireballs, and if you can manage to hit the lava projectiles while Mario is invincible, send those to your enemies as well. In my journal entry on the original game, I went over how the player's comfort level changes as they repeat the courses and become more familiar with them. I call this the gameplay paradigm loop. It includes 5 different ways the players think about playing the game and how they progress from one paradigm to another. A quick recap. The first time the player reaches a new stage, they're cautious. They don't know where any of the power-ups or tricky obstacles are, and their priority is forward progression. After getting through the stage a few times, the next time they encounter that stage, they will have a plan. They know where the power-ups are and what parts of the course need more time. After they get a game over, the next paradigm I call the brute force paradigm, where the priority is just to get back to where you were before you got the game over. So the player will try to rush through the obstacles because this run of the course feels more like a punishment. After getting another game over because the player tried to force their way through the entire course, the next time they will explore the course thoroughly, looking for shortcuts and secrets. After these have been found, then the player reaches the mastery paradigm. They know the shortcuts, secrets, and tricky obstacles. They clear the stage nearly 100% of the time and use this course to prepare for future courses by getting power-ups and extra lives. I feel like this applies to Mario 35 as well, but in a different way. Naturally, players will start a new stage cautiously, but the more times they play through the same stage, the better their plan becomes on how to beat it next time. But playing an old stage over and over again in this game is not a punishment. If you're short on resources, then it's actually a blessing. In the end, mastering a stage changes based on your current level of resources. Can you string together a high enough combo to increase your time? Do you know how to collect a lot of coins fast in order to get more spins? Do you know where the sub-areas are found to get a break from enemies being sent to you? And do you know the stages by name so that you can pick your path in a warp zone? Knowing how important exploring each stage is, Nintendo included a course practice mode so that players can move from planning to exploring to mastery. After we get enough players that have mastered all of the early stages, the game will include later stages into the rotation. I think that after enough people master the later stages, the game will need to be changed up again in some way to keep the newer players from being matched with the veteran players. Something like Tetris Invictus in Tetris 99, or a ladder that the player can climb, found in many other competitive multiplayer games. In any case, I really hope that Nintendo builds a party mode like Tetris 99, so that you can play with your friends or perhaps some bots for a more casual game. Of course, if I had my way, Nintendo would keep the game running past March. It happened for Jump Rope Challenge, so there is a small amount of hope that this game will stay up past its original end date as well.